in the midst of crisis and fear and even panic, what often happens, and what we have seen some in Dallas and in our country during the past few weeks, is a process begins for some that I would call othering. You start othering people in order to put the blame on them and make yourself feel innocent and safe. Look at what's happened in the case of this Ebola crisis. Some people are focused on how the hospital blew it, how they failed. Some on the CDC and how they failed to keep people safe because 2 more people got infected. Too many ways they did in fact fail, and that is so. But could we remember here that these are human beings? They didn't wake up in the morning trying to figure out how to fail. This is easy to see in hindsight. Maybe they should have had better foresight. We can argue that and learn from it. But the fact is, even if they made mistakes, this was an unprecedented situation that befell these people. And now we find ourselves with hurting people even in the healthcare world who are vilified for not doing a better job in caring for Thomas Eric Duncan and their family. And we have a choice. Are we going to participate in nurturing that negative narrative, which makes us feel better, perhaps, at their expense? Or are we going to say that we want them to be able to regain favor too, and not have to have the stigma stick to them forever? Similarly, there are those who are othering Mr. Duncan for bringing this virus to this country, as if they know he willfully and knowingly did so, even though he's not here to speak for himself. Some have political agendas about immigration and the uninsured and what government should have done differently that would serve their interest in seeing someone else in charge that they think would do a better job. We also hear this with regard to Louise and the boys, to the point where they have to be concerned about what happens when they come out of quarantine and are back into their lives among us. Will they be welcomed well back into the community? Let's remember that Louise is one of us. She's a member of this church. I think we can remember that. I'd remind you she's also an American citizen. She is one of us. She did absolutely nothing wrong in this case, and through no fault of her own, she lost the love of her life, and her son lost the father he was hoping to get to know for the first time in his life, and their future has been robbed from them together. And not only that, but she and the boys in this quarantine place have lost all their possessions. They have nothing, and yet people are blaming them. I mentioned last week that some of the most beautiful things have happened during this time because some people in the midst of this crisis have shown their true colors with wonderful expressions of support and generosity from individuals and government and the philanthropic community, and we're grateful for this. And it just shows that there are great hearts out there of goodwill who want to be part of the solution, and the way they do that is by binding themselves to the community and those who are hurting and bearing one another's burdens and generously giving. And then there are others. Some who have called and emailed, the letters, the internet comments. I can tell you, I've heard some of the meanest, cruelest things. It just stuns me and makes me sad. And I would repeat over and over to you as I have, there comes a point where we have to realize this is not just about them, but it's about us. How we respond says as much about us as it does about anyone else. And a situation like this reveals who we really are. And when we try to distance ourselves or to make someone other, especially those who did nothing wrong, we are tearing at the fabric of our community. When the second nurse became symptomatic, one of the boys turned to me in the quarantine quarters and asked, "Are they going to blame that on us?" And I told him that we can't promise him how people will treat them, but we're going to do everything we can to say that we belong to each other and that we walk this road together, and we will not allow them to be othered by this if there's anything in our power to do with it.